where I feel like I'm talking to myself, but I'm going to go for it because this is what we need to do. And we have a Torah portion that is somehow incredibly connected to our lives right now. Now, I know that it's always connected to our lives, but the Torah portion, we look at quarantine. We look at people in isolation. It's called Tazria and Metzora. And we see that there's a situation where in the community, in the Israelite community, there is tzara'at. Tzara'at often has been referred to as leprosy, but it's not really leprosy. It could be 3 other skin conditions, but it's also not even just on human beings. It can also get to your house. So whether it was mold in the house or eczema on our bodies, there is a struggle that we get to encounter in the ancient world. And the priests, the folks that are the precursors to rabbis and the civil leaders, they are the ones that are addressing it. So it can get onto their clothes, their skin, their homes, and it was scary for them. They too thought it was contagious. They thought that these impurities that tzara'at brought could be dangerous to them. And it was dangerous for 2 reasons. One reason why it was dangerous is because they thought they could actually get sick from it. And the other reason why they thought it was dangerous is because this contagion could also keep them further from God. They thought that if they were in a place of impurity, this ritual impurity, not about clean or dirty, not clean and unclean, but a ritual impurity that we don't really have a sense of in our lifetimes, the idea is that they could be exiled from God if this contagion was to enter into the tabernacle, the portable temple that they traveled with over the course of that wilderness after getting out of Egypt. So we have a couple of things that are already on our mind. There's something out there called tzara'at. It's not good for you. They thought that it could make them estranged from God. And they had to quarantine and isolate themselves until a priest would come, inspect them, and be able to say, yes, it's time to enter. It is eerily concerning to read this in our context of our lives. I remember growing up and reading this and thinking when somebody has tzara'at and they needed to go outside of the community, and it was in the 80s and the 90s, and the first thing I thought of was, no, they shouldn't. It was too close to the AIDS crisis in our world, where we had stigma go upon the person that was feeling some sort of illness. And we said, no, bring them in. And today we know that having some distance can actually save lives. And it's working. We see that the distance is working. So now we want to say, yes, isolate, quarantine, be responsible, not with stigma, not with blame, but with a sense of protecting ourselves. So then what is the Torah actually teaching us? I want to say something about this. In the Torah, it says that when somebody has this tzara'at and they encounter somebody else, they're supposed to call out tameh twice. Tameh means impure. Some will translate it unclean. I'm going to translate it as tameh. I'm going to translate it in a sense that there was some kind of spiritual, ritual, purity issue that was very present for them, not so present for us. But they said tameh twice, tameh, tameh, and folks would keep a distance. Now, the rabbis are going to say, why is that important? Well, in a practical way, they're saying it to save somebody else's life. Tameh, tameh, stay back. But not everybody agreed. Sometimes in the Gemara, there's an argument that says, if there's 2 different calls for tameh, there has to be 2 different reasons. So the first one could be tameh stay back because I have this affection, sara'at, whatever skin condition it is. So I don't want you to get it, so I'm calling out tameh. But the second tameh is, I need help. The rabbis say that the second call of tameh is, I need you to know me. I need you to be aware that I'm alone. Tameh, tameh, be careful. And don't forget about me, because I need you to keep me in your prayers. That's what it says in the Gemara, keep me in your prayers. But I think it's so much more than that. Tameh, tameh, we're not always good about asking for help. I don't think we're always so great at saying, I need you to be present. And I think it's that much harder now when we can't be present in the way that we're inclined to. When we have these Shiva minions in the evening, and I'm so grateful that we can do that and really show up for people, including folks in our synagogue are showing up for people that they don't know, and that's perfect. That's how it's supposed to be. But at the same time, we can still show up for people even through this physical distancing. And the more I talk to people, the more I see it's important. The more I see that we need connections. And I know for the synagogue, we're trying to do that. But it's not just about coronavirus. There's other things that could be challenging. Maybe I'm unemployed or underemployed. Maybe I'm in a difficult relationship. Maybe I'm not safe. Maybe it is coronavirus. Tameh, tameh. Keep me in your prayers and keep a distance. Don't forget about me and protect yourself at the same time. When we struggle, and I want to be clear about this, when we struggle, that's not impurity. The question of impurity is ancient. It's not about pure and it's not about clean. Tameh and tahor, these statuses of ritual purity, they relate to mortality. When there is tameh, this impurity, we respond to a spiritual darkness, says one teacher, Rachel Adler, at the Hebrew Union College. When we respond to tameh, we respond to a spiritual darkness. Tahara, a purifying process. Tahara is our re-entry into light. We know that there are folks who feel tameh not because they're bad, but because they're sick and they need help and they might feel in a darkness. So we respond with the tahara, with the light, with the purity, with the presence. So if one has sara'at and they call out tameh, tameh, and they go outside the camp and they're supposed to be in isolation or quarantine, sometimes we call out tameh, tameh, and we isolate ourselves feeling like we aren't worthy of help, but you are. Even so am I. I think we often misunderstand what the text is trying to really teach us. But at the same time, it reflects how we feel. We don't want to be a burden on somebody. Hey folks, be a burden. That's okay. There's a lot of people in this synagogue. There's a lot of people in this community. We can carry you on our shoulders for a little while. If you need some help, let us know. If we can respond and you come towards us with tameh, tameh, we have a response. It's hineni, here I am. I can't fix everything for you, but we can all do our part. You don't have to wait to be asked to volunteer. If you know someone alone, call them. If you think you have something to offer, reach out. If you have a little bit of money to give for tzedakah, give a little bit. We can make a tremendous difference in people's lives because some are too inhibited to even call out the tameh. We don't want people to feel alone the way we know so many ran away in the 80s during that AIDS crisis, and working with, like many of you did, communities of care for people with AIDS or ACT UP or anything else out there. We know that being alone is just painful. So let's learn some lessons of when we missed the mark and fear drove us. And let's instead figure out, how do we step forward and be present even from a safe distance? We can do that. I wish you lots of love, lots of strength. I hope that you get to sense God's goodness and grace and compassion, and that we make that contagious. Let's